In the ancient times, humans had to rely on hunting and gathering to find their food and to be able to eat. And so this meant quite naturally that they would have had long periods of time without eating at all, engaging in now what we call fasting. Now, our bodies therefore had to adapt to long periods of not eating, but they didn't just survive those periods, they actually thrived in those periods. So now we fast track to modern day where we've got unlimited access to food. It is now very common to have 3 meals a day and then snacking in between. This change, however, hasn't come without a cost. And this is why fasting has become much more popular in recent years, because there are huge health benefits to fasting. And so in this video, I want to give you 6 reasons why you should start fasting today, because before I learned these things about fasting, I hugely underestimated the power that fasting can have on your health in the short term, but also in the long term. Let's get started. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel where we're all about living your best life through optimizing your health, and today we're going to be doing that through looking at fasting. But before I go through these benefits, there are 2 myths that I think I do need to debunk that do stop a lot of people from starting fasting and thinking that fasting is actually any good. And the first one is breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You may have heard this before. I certainly heard about this as I was growing up, and that made me think that I have to have breakfast in the morning to stay healthy. But unfortunately, this is not true. And where this came from, interestingly enough, is from Kellogg's, where they were trying to promote their cornflakes, and this was their tagline: breakfast is the most important meal of the day. If they could get people to believe that, they were more likely to buy their product. There's absolutely no research to show that this is even true. Now, the second myth is that sugar is needed for energy, particularly first thing in the morning. And it's actually not true that sugar gives you energy. What sugar does is it will promote dopamine in your brain, which makes you feel good. Now, it's true that sugar will provide fuel to your cells in your body, but having sugar on its own, what that will actually do is create these high blood glucose variabilities throughout the day, which actually decreases your energy as your body struggles to get your sugar levels balanced. So you're much better to have sugar released slowly throughout the day, and you can do that much better, much more easily with eating more fat and protein. So getting onto fasting, there are 2 types of fasting. We've got prolonged fasting, which is where you're going to fast for a long period of time, say whether that's 24 hours or 3 days, 7 days. And then you've got intermittent fasting, and this is what I'm going to talk about a bit more specifically in this video. Intermittent fasting is when you're going to have a window in your 24-hour day where you don't eat, and a window where you do eat. And typically, to get the most amount of these benefits I'm about to go through, you want your eating window to be as small as possible, and your non-eating window, your fasting window, to be as large as possible. So this can be anywhere between 23 hours of fasting, and so therefore you only have 1 meal a day, and that will certainly get a lot of these benefits. Or you can go as short as 12 hours or 14 hours, whatever it may be. Now, naturally, of course, most of us are going to do probably between 10 and 12 hours, because if you had your last meal or last bit of food in the evening at 8 p.m, then you had your breakfast at 8 a.m, then that's naturally going to be a 12 hours. So I think a lot of us do intermittent fasting without knowing about it, but the problem is, because also we're not intentional, the eating window is actually quite big, and so we don't really get these benefits to the same degree. So we want to close down that eating window to really maximize these benefits. So here are the 6 top benefits of intermittent fasting that I could find, and all of these things that I go through are backed by research. You can see that in the description. So number 1 is it activates and promotes a process that we call autophagy. Autophagy is a process in which the body starts to recycle old and broken down cells in the body, particularly protein, but it also does this for cancer cells. And this is why fasting has started to become associated with helping the body to fight cancer, because cancer cells will feed on glucose, on sugar. And so if you deprive the body of that sugar, then you can actually start to starve out those cancer cells. The research is becoming more prevalent to the point that drug companies are now starting to produce drugs that actually mimic the effect of fasting to help fight cancer. There's been many case studies where people have managed to fight cancer through fasting, as well as massively reduce the symptoms and side effects of chemotherapy, very interestingly. Number 2, it can reset your gut bacteria. And it does this by improving the diversity and the amount of bacteria in your gut. And this is very important for 2 primary reasons. We need our gut bacteria. There's a lot of bacteria in our gut that helps us to digest our food and to absorb nutrients. So particularly for absorbing nutrients, if you've got a poor gut bacteria, and this can very easily happen if you're taking, say, antibiotics, then you're not going to be as good at absorbing your food, absorbing your nutrients, which means you can, in some cases, become malnourished to a degree, or at least deficient in certain minerals or vitamins, even though you're taking those minerals or vitamins. But the other reason why this is important is because 90% of your serotonin, which is a hormone in your brain that is responsible for happiness and feel good and your mental health, 90% of that is produced in your gut. And so if you've got a poor gut, then you can actually then have a decrease in brain health. So it massively helps in regards to your brain health. Number 3, it can reduce chronic inflammation. This has become really an epidemic in recent years, over the last kind of few decades. Chronic inflammation is very, very common, and this is going to include pretty much any autoimmune disease that you can think of: MS, Alzheimer's, rheumatoid arthritis, IBS, and so on. And so fasting has been shown to reduce the inflammatory markers in our blood, one of them being C-reactive protein, which can therefore help to reduce chronic inflammation in the body. So very, very powerful, particularly if you're suffering with chronic inflammation. Now, before going to number 4, the majority of people that watch my videos are not yet subscribed. If I can just ask one favor that will help this channel much more than you probably think, and that is just to hit that subscribe button just down here. It will help me massively. And my pledge to you is that I'm going to continue to produce the best videos possible, and the more views, the more subscribers this channel gets, the better the content that I can produce. Thank you very much. Number 4, it can boost your immune system. This is very, very important, particularly in recent years with the pandemic. What fasting does is it basically puts your cells into survival mode, which means that it becomes more effective at pushing out viruses and bacteria in your body. And there's research that I put in the description below that has shown that fasting can actually improve and increase the immune cells in your body. So if you're suffering with a virus, if you start getting the initial symptoms of a virus or a cold or a bacterial infection, fasting has been shown to help to get rid of that and to basically abort you actually getting ill. But also, if you do regular fasting, you're going to be less likely to get ill as often. Number 5, and this one is going to impact you more in the short term as well as the long term, is it can boost your brain function, which can help to boost your focus and your mood and anything that is associated with that. So if you're somebody that struggles with, say, energy throughout the day, or just struggles with focus when you're working or concentration, by going into fasting, what we end up doing is producing what we call ketones. And ketones is another fuel source, an alternative to the sugar. But what's amazing about ketones is that it's really, really healthy for the brain. It's a fantastic fuel source for the brain. The brain actually needs ketones. This is why that people that do fasting, whether it's intermittent or prolonged, can often have increased focus and concentration, and they're just much better and much more able to do their work to a higher efficiency and effectiveness throughout the day. And it would also, therefore, because you're improving your brain function, make you less likely to getting issues in the future in regards to brain health, things like Alzheimer's. And lastly, number 6, and I think this is one that will be interesting for a lot of you because this is a very, very popular topic, particularly nowadays, and that is it's very effective at helping you to lose weight. Now, why is this so? The reason why is because when we're eating, your body will use the fuel from the sugar in your blood that you're getting from when you eat. Now, that can be from sugar that you're eating or the fat and protein that it will then convert into sugar. Now, the beauty about fasting is that if you're no longer feeding it with sugar, no longer feeding your blood with sugar, it then has to find an alternative to provide you with energy so you can keep going. And the way that it does this is by finding the fuel and energy now from the fat that you've been storing when you have been eating. So it basically switches over to burning fat for fuel, which means then you start losing weight and start burning fat. This is also therefore very, very good for improving your metabolic health into the future, which will make it much less likely that you're going to develop things like diabetes, etc. Now, they're my top 6 health benefits, but I have a bonus one for you, and that is it's going to help save time, energy, and money. Because if you're deciding to do intermittent fasting and you're going to decrease the amount of meals that you have in a day, then you don't have to make as many meals in the day. And if you're like me, then thinking about what I have to eat for dinner it does require a lot of brain power, and I prefer to not have to do that. And so the advantage of having less meals is that there's less meals to have to think about, but also you don't have to spend as much money on the food. But what you can end up doing then instead is spending the same amount of money, but you buy better quality food for the meals that you are having. So you can actually increase the quality of those 2 meals rather than spreading out the amount of money you spend on 3 meals. But this is the other thing that you have to be aware of, is that if you are going to have less meals, so if you're going from 3 to 2 or even to 1, so it'd be even more important if you're having 1 meal, then you have to make sure that the meals that you're having are very nutritious, because you're not going to have as much opportunity to get the nutrients into your body. So if you're having 1 meal, you have to make sure it's packed full of all the nutrients that you need for that day. So a question that I know a lot of you will have is, how long should I do intermittent fasting for? How long should that fasting window ideally be? Now, this really depends on you. A very common window will be 16-8, where you're fasting for 16 hours and you eat within 8. That is very reasonable to do as well, because that means you're having breakfast at 10 and dinner at 6, which actually is not a huge change for a lot of people. But if you're doing that, you have to make sure that you're not snacking in the evening or before your first meal, because you're just going to break that fast and not get these benefits. Now, what I would say is gradually ease yourself into it. If you're somebody that has always eaten your 3 meals a day and snacked a lot, and you've done that for many, many, many years, your body will be used to getting its energy supply from the constant supply of sugar in your blood. If you start to take that away very suddenly and you do that for a long period of time, you might actually find that you feel really, really bad. So my recommendation is to do it gradually over time. So for example, if you normally have breakfast at 8, then have breakfast at 9, do that for a few days, and then go to 10 and then 11, and then find a time that suits you, that suits your lifestyle as well, because that's the other thing. It doesn't matter really when in the day you put that window. You can put that window so where you eat your first and last meal, you can put that wherever that suits you best. It's the amount of time that you're fasting for that really is going to have the impact. Now, an easy way of thinking about this, if you just want to simplify it, that is just to have your breakfast as late as possible and have your dinner as early as possible. Obviously, do this with caution. Any big change you make to your diet like this, particularly if you suffer with certain diseases, may have an impact at the beginning because of that transition period. This is why you should do it gradually. And if you're worried, of course, speak to your doctor if you are under care of a doctor. Now, one of the big advantages of doing intermittent fasting is it's really easy not to snack in the day, because if you have a shorter window in which you're eating, then you're going to feel less hungry in between them because you're eating sooner. You're not having as much of a gap in between each individual meal of the day. And this is great. And the reason why I say that is because there are huge health benefits to not snacking. And if you want to find out what that is, to help encourage you and promote yourself to not snack on top of intermittent fasting, which is definitely something I recommend to help boost your health, then I would highly suggest checking my video here that I did recently, and you can see some of the benefits over there. Once again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you on my next one. Have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.